Hello, I am Janie from the Warrior Caregiver community where we march forward for those that we love. Warrior caregivers need to learn how to manage guilt. I know how easily it is to fall into the victim caregiver model of feeling guilty. The first time that I had to deal with guilt after giving birth to my cerebral palsy daughter was when I was still in the hospital. I was feeling guilty for everything that had happened to her and was blaming myself. I remember standing, looking at her and crying and saying to the nurse how unfair it was of all the things that had happened to my little girl. And I remember that nurse patting me on the back and just telling me that I was having postnatal depression. And I thought, how does she know how I'm feeling? Do I look guilty? Because I was sure feeling guilty at that moment. I remember having the little mental wars of, what if I had done this, and what if I had done that different? And it was not until I finally acknowledged that guilt that I was able to deal with it. I actually met with a psychologist that was working with the parents of these children, and that's when I learned how to manage that guilt. I had to acknowledge it, and I had to know that it was okay to feel anger and guilty. And I had to stop blaming myself. There were many more times while I was raising my daughter that I was going to have feelings of guilt. I'd like to share one more story with you. When my daughter was 7, I had her in physiotherapy. She was getting very, very uncooperative about going to these sessions. And I was actually feeling a little guilty about making her go, even though I knew the importance of her doing these exercises. I had drove to the school and I had picked her up, and I told her we were going to her physiotherapy. I remember her getting very angry and verbalizing that anger. I drove to the physiotherapy session anyway. I pulled up on the opposite side of the street and I parked the truck. As I put the truck into park, she reached down, undid her seatbelt, opened her door, and jumped out. She ran around my truck and out onto the street in front of a big delivery truck. I'm not sure how the truck got stopped. I just remember having a whole flurry of mixed emotions. I remember feeling angry at my daughter for just doing what she had just done. I remember feeling relief that she had made it across the street. I remember feeling glad that the truck had able to get stopped. I remember feeling anger at the truck driver because he was shaking his fist at me as if it was my fault. I remember feeling anger at my daughter because she was pretending like nothing had happened. And I remember feeling guilty for having all these feelings of anger and guilt. I got out of the truck and I crossed the street to where she waited at the door to go into physio. And as I leaned my back against the wall, my knees buckled and the tears ran down my cheeks. I realized that I had to get control of this anger or it was going to consume me. I had to acknowledge this anger, and I had to share this anger and these feelings. And I had to get control of it. And I had to remember that I am human. I am going to have feelings. I am going to have feelings of anger, and I am going to have feelings of guilt. And it's okay to have these feelings. It's okay to use strong discipline, and it's okay to say no and not feel guilty. I know how easily we fall back into being a victim. And I know firsthand how you can pull yourself back to becoming a warrior. Please join me at the Warrior Caregiver Community, where we march forward for those that we love.